This man, age 55, has around 500,000 and would like to know how much he can spend when he soon retires. My name is Daniel. We currently serve a few dozen clients, and first we're going to take a look at where he is at now, then what is he projecting to be able to spend, and finally, how can we tweak that potentially much higher? So a little breakdown here. We have 500,000, as simple as it gets, just sitting in a tax-deferred account or a 401k. Of course, this case study is completely hypothetical. It's not a real situation. Dave is not a real person. We do have there, though, he's age 55 in this example. For income and savings, currently making around $100,000. That's actually where the Social Security projection comes from. We have him taking that at 62. He is wanting to retire sooner rather than later. We'll show that in the next slide. And all he's doing for savings is just maxing out his 401k. Anything above that currently that he gets additional to his regular expenses, he's just spending on whatever else. His goals here, we have retiring at age 59, so that's actually age 59 and a half when he's able to start taking that without penalties. We have the minimum monthly expenses as $3,000. Of course, the question is how much can he spend? So we're going to try and get this much higher, but at a minimum, wants to spend $3,000 just to make sure he even could retire. And then we have on top of that $3,000 is the annual retirement health cost and his retirement long-term care cost that we projected out. So if that's the case, we don't change anything. We just leave that money in the market in a basic 60-40 split. What does that baseline scenario look like? Here we have it. The probability of success, according to the software, which of course, I always have to mention this, is not guaranteed. It's just a Monte Carlo analysis, is 91%. So you can see the orange there, that's actually withdrawing from the 401k, and then of course paying taxes. And then the blue there, that is taking the Social Security starting at age 62. So he's just retiring at age 59, taking the Social Security early, and then the monthly goal of spending $3,000. When we do that, that's where he has, in the baseline scenario, you can see there in the top right, the 91% probability of success. Now, part of the thing with probability of success, and you might know this, is that 91% of the time in this scenario, that actually means not only did you not run out of money, but you could have spent more money. So if you're willing to be flexible, usually, not always, but you're going to want to shoot for a little bit lower than in the 90th percentile range, because you're willing, hey, if I shoot for 70% and things fall back to 50 or 40, I'm actually willing to reduce the amount that I'm spending and shoot that back up there to 70. I just want to make sure that when I get to the end, I know that I quote unquote succeeded in not running out of money, but if I could have spent $1,000 more a month, every month for the rest of my life adjusting for inflation, I would have liked to do that as opposed to leaving behind a big inheritance. So taking that into account and trying to maximize the amount he's spending, we just said, what if we get that probability of success down to 70%? How much could we increase the spending? We see there at a 70% probability of success, $3,580. That still means 70% of the time you could have actually spent more money. So you could get this higher, you could get this lower. This is just an example. And then another thing you could also look at is, instead of spending more, what if he kept that $3,000 a month and tried to retire earlier? Yes, of course, he would have those 401k penalties there because he's withdrawing before 59 and a half. But if he doesn't have any goals in terms of leaving behind money to heirs and just wants to retire as soon as he can, that is an option on the table that a lot of people don't realize they have. He could still do this technically. He has a probability of success of 55%, so doable, absolutely, if he is willing to be flexible. Of course, that's 3.5 years earlier. So from a 91% all the way down to 55%, obviously is significant, but worth noting. So now we tried a couple things to increase the probability of success from that 91%. This is what we came up with. So here is the strategy change just for getting him to be able to spend this amount and retire with more confidence in having that income there. We did a half and half split. So half of that 500,000 going into a deferred annuity, deferring that out about 8 years and then turning that on at age 63. That produced about $31.7 thousand of income a year. That does not adjust for inflation over time. So that's where that second step comes in. The additional funds that he was receiving from the annuity in those beginning years that were actually above the $3,000 a month. What we did is we just assumed that that went back into a taxable account. Yes, we could do much better with this. We could put some of that into a Roth. We could look at other vehicles. Just for simplicity's sake, we didn't completely optimize this, but we just said, let's assume that's going into a taxable account, because if he's receiving $31,000 from the annuity and he only actually needs 20, we're not just going to assume that he spends that where he wouldn't have done that without the annuity strategy and then try and make an apples to apples comparison. That wouldn't quite work. And then finally, just understanding that this strategy is a little bit less optimized for growth, but more optimized for locking in that income security increasing his probability of success of retiring, but maybe not of leaving as much behind. When that happens, we see the new baseline scenario here. We get the probability of success, again, not guaranteed, but by the Monte Carlo analysis, up to 98%. You can see the dark blue there still is the Social Security. The yellow, again, is the 401k withdrawals. And the light blue, the aqua there, that is the annuity. You can see that doesn't get bigger over time. Again, that's because it doesn't adjust for inflation. So same situation, retiring at 59, taking Social Security early, and having that monthly goal at $3,000. Hey, real quick, if you're finding this helpful, leave a like and let me know. Now, again, we're trying to find out how much he could spend. So what if, same thing as last time, we reduced that probability of success down to 70%, we see we're actually able to get $3,670 a month, so about $90 a month more that we were able to get from using this strategy every single month for the rest of his life. Again, doesn't seem like that much money, but $100 a month almost for the rest of your life, that's almost $1,200 a year. Compounding over time really does add up. A quick warning though, if this is the strategy that you were looking into, you started to make those changes with the annuity, you were going to try and retire around 59 and a half, but then you said, you know what, I actually liked what we looked at before of retiring earlier, taking some penalties, enrolling with that lower probability of success. It actually did affect that negatively. So we saw before it was 55%. If you tried to retire right after you moved some of that money into the annuity, at 56, we see it drops 22% from 55 down to 33. So an important lesson there is the annuity must match the timing of your situation, or really for any guaranteed income strategy. So some key takeaways here: small tweaks can make big changes in terms of how many more years you have to work, in terms of how much more money you can spend. Metrics matter, so of course we ran the probability of success metric there. That doesn't tell the full story. You have a 100% probability of success, 100% of the time you could have spent more money. So there's a couple different lenses you want to look at things through here and run some numbers. And finally, timing is very important, of course, especially with the guaranteed income strategies. If you're within 10 years of retirement in the US, there's so many different things you could focus on, but you just don't know what to zero in on. Subscribe. I release videos for you twice a week on how to do that peacefully. Bye-bye.